Welcome back. I wanted to take the opportunity to show you a little bit more about what I mean with the difference between fresh bruises versus old bruises. I'm lucky to have my model here, Zach, willing to volunteer both of his cheekbones for this demonstration. All right, so again, just like the bruise we did on Grayson's arm, we're going to be starting with a base. But in this case, in making a fresh bruise, we want to start with a base of maroon. And so, again, using this maroon color, tap it out on your hand a little bit to make sure you don't have an overloaded brush. And what we're going to be doing here is showing an injury right here on his cheekbone. Now the nice part about building this bruise up here is that fresh bruises, when you have a lot of blood that's collected underneath the surface, tends to stretch the skin a little bit and make it look more shiny. The natural prominence of the cheekbone here helps accentuate that effect without having to build it up too much. So we're going to be starting with, in this case, we're going to be definitely going for a heavier application, but not too much at one time, heavier application of the red/maroon. We're going to bring out the color here. The majority of the color is going to be collected here, and we're going to have a little bit of extension of that coming out and feathering out from this point of impact. Be careful when you're working around your subject's eyes. If you want to carry the bruise up onto their eyelids, I usually like letting them know that I'm about to touch there. Close your eyes for a second. Thank you. Okay, open up again. And always take a moment, step back, look at how much you've built up. And that is a good initial base here. So now, for the next color, we're going to be going back to our purple. If you're looking at manufacturers of makeup, if you want to take a step up, Ben Nye makes a really excellent collection of bruise wheels. That's a very reputable manufacturer. Marin also makes some good ones too. But again, we're doing these with just the grease paints you can find in a drugstore or a regular Halloween store. So now we're going to start heavily building up the purple. Lay down a layer here. And then remember, you want to keep attention to eliminating any brush strokes. You also want to watch your lower eye there, touching there. You also want to make sure that it has that mottled look to it. So you might see a little bit of creasing in the bruise around the creasing in the eyes as the blood settles out after the injury. And really, the majority of this color, or pardon me, the majority of this bruise, the coloration can come almost entirely from red and purple. And if you're doing simulations for healthcare exercises, you want to keep this in mind. You don't want to simulate old injuries if you're trying to create someone that looks like they're coming in and they just have received an injury and they need medical attention. You're going to want your bruises to look fresher for that. Okay. So now it's looking pretty good. What we're going to do is we're going to set the grease paint again with some setting powder or some talcum powder. We're going to apply this on a foam latex sponge. Do this gently to not smear what you've done. Just lightly tap. And what you'll see too is that this setting powder tends to tone down the colors a little bit. If you are just wanting something to look like normal skin, if you let that sort of dull, muted setting powder settle in a little bit as the grease sort of soaks into it, it'll start to look like natural skin after a few minutes. But in this case, we don't want that flatness to it. We want to have a little bit of shine. And for that, you can use glycerin. This is pretty inexpensive. You can find this at pharmacies. And the glycerin is actually very useful in moulage and makeup because you can use it mixed with water to simulate sweat. You can use this to add a little bit of shine, and you can even, if you do have to apply fake blood to the skin, if you put down a light layer of glycerin, it'll help prevent staining of the actor's skin. In this case, we're going to be putting just a little bit of glycerin on our fingers and lightly tapping over this bruise. So again, you don't want to disturb the makeup underneath, but we just want to get a little bit of shine to that skin and make it look like that skin is stretching. And voila, fresh bruise. Okay, so in contrast with this fresh reddish purple bruise, now we're going to build an old bruise. And this is one that's probably been around at least for a week. With those bruises, you're going to see more yellow and green pigmentation. For the base of this bruise, I like to build this up with this same mustard yellow color that we had used for the center of the arm bruise that we put on Grayson. So for here, we're going to be working with this same area of injury here on the cheekbone, but now there may have been a little bit more blood that had leaked up around the eye, and so the area of pigmentation is going to be spread out a little bit more because usually, you know how they say bruises grow, you just haven't seen the blood till it's aged out some. So we're going to start out with this base of yellow, put it down thinly with this yellow. Really, this yellow is very strong color, and even just a hint of it applied to the skin gives it a discoloration that is immediately recognizable as bruised. So for this, we're going to carry it a little bit underneath the eye. Can you look up for me? And be very careful working around the eye. And tap this out here. We're going to, you can just take a little bit of that color and kind of stretch it up underneath the eye gutter right here, just by continuing on the color that's been laid down on the cheekbone. So that's good. Okay. So we're also going to be using a little bit of this red pigment. In this case, what we're going to be emphasizing is sort of the tear gutter of the eye here. Getting in the corner of the eye and streaking it out some. This is something you definitely want to be careful you don't have sharp edges around there. But it usually, whenever you've had an injury in that area, it usually has a little bit more of a linear look to it as the blood tracks down along that gutter. So open up, take a look. Great. Close your eye. All right, I'm going to touch the corner of your eye. Okay. So open up. Good. And you can close your eye again. You can carry a little bit of that bruising maybe onto the top of the eyelid itself, being very gentle and very delicate over the eyelid. All right, look up. Great. All right, so now we've added some of our base colors. Now we want to add some punch to this. In this case, we will be adding punch through the use of green. Green is a great pigment to add towards where the center of that bruise was. You can mix it with elements of purple that you had, a little bit of purple, and a little bit of green. So just pick up a little bit, and again, the green in this case is very potent and strong. You don't want it too muddy from the purple, but if you have a brighter green, you want to tone it down a little bit. So tap it out, only have a little bit on your brush. And sort of lay it down where you can see on this side where there was a lot of blood collection there. Now you want to have that pigment concentrating in this area. And of course, you can go to Google Images to get inspiration for how the colors of those bruises look, the sort of modeling to it. Or you can just take pictures of the next bruise that you get. Use that for inspiration too. Okay, I want to bring a little bit more of the yellow up onto his lid here. I'm going to touch your outer lid. A little bit in here. See? Now is a great opportunity to use your stipple sponge, bringing in a little bit of that red color again, that red maroon and green, and just adding some texture in there. Now, this bruise, unlike the other one, is going to be looking pretty flat. The skin isn't swollen, it's just taking care of all that old blood. So for this, we're not going to have to apply any glycerin, we're just going to want to powder around the grease paint and absorb it. And this is an old injury, so this is very subtle. You want the colors to be muted. You can make this brighter, like a brighter yellow-green combination. If you want to have a more punchy-looking old bruise, but this is just wanting to look like something that has been around for a little bit. I'm going to adjust the green a little bit more, and you can apply grease paint down on top of the powder. It's not great to do it, but you shouldn't feel too inhibited from doing that if you want to. Remember, changing the direction of your brush here and there can help change up the change the texture and the feel, help this feel from looking too painted. And powder on top of that. Whisk it off. Old blush brush. There you have it. All right, so new bruise here, old bruise there. Pretty simple, very quick, and in 10 minutes or less you have bruises that you can use at Halloween or at simulation at your healthcare facility. This is Evelyn Lockhart at Contrast Creative. Thanks for watching.